All right, it is 7 p.m. and I will call this regular meeting of the Planning Commission, the November 9th, 2020 meeting to order at 7 o'clock. First up on our agenda is public remarks. A reminder for those who are joining us for the first time, and even for those who are joining us for many times in the past, there are two ways to speak during these virtual meetings. The first would be for our attendees in the Zoom call to use the raise hand feature, and Peter will promote you to a panelist so you can speak. The second way, of course, is to give us a phone call, and you can call us at 517-349-1232. However you choose to address the Planning Commission this evening, I will remind you that public remarks are limited to 3 minutes, and you are asked to please provide your name and address at the beginning of your remarks for the public record. There will be 4 opportunities for public remarks tonight. There'll be an opportunity right now and at the conclusion of the meeting, at which time you can speak about any topic. There will also be 2 public hearings this evening, and at the public comment section of those public hearings, we ask that you please restrict your comments to those topics. So it looks like we do have at least one hand raised now, and I will go ahead and let Peter promote them in the order that they were raising their hand, if possible, to a panelist, and they will go ahead and be able to speak. And I do have, I know you can't see it, normally if we were in person, we'd have our little lights, but I do have my phone timer up set to 3 minutes. So I'll go ahead and get that started and give you a 30-second warning as we progress through here. So I think I've reached the end of my vamping, and we'll go ahead and let Peter promote folks in and get started.
Okay, hi everybody. So I know I see the people that have their hand raised. You probably actually want to speak during the public comment, but you can speak whenever, and your hands are up now, so you are coming on with the Planning Commission. So the first name I saw was from the Zangs. So we're gonna, when I turn your microphone on, what's gonna happen, you'll need to unmute yourself, and then you'll be able to speak with the Planning Commission, and then when your comments are over, and like Chair Hendrickson said, he's got a timer, it's 3 minutes, you'll get, your mic will get cut. Here you are, Zangs.
Okay, good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
We can.
Okay, thank you guys for this opportunity here. I actually have comments regarding the new project on Powell, the apartment building.
Pardon me, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you give us your name and address, please, for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Jack. Official name is H-A-I-B-I-A-O, and last name Z-H-A-N-G. I live at Powell, 4719 Powell, Okemos.
Thank you very much. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Okay, thank you. I have comments regarding the new construction, new proposal plans for the apartment building here. I'm against that project here. I have 2 questions here. First thing here is, what benefit does that project bring to the township here? And second one is, the contractor work on the project here. Lots of time they don't care about the impact to our neighborhood, our property here. Like the one actually we currently have the LaFonto Realtor, they remove all the trees and was going to build a car dealership there. And then now, and then they even promise us not to do, actually will not impact us at all, because they are going to build a 16 feet concrete fence and trees along our property here, our border. Now, actually, it's not a long time ago, they told me they will not do anything anymore here. I was very disappointed here. They cut all the trees, now they will not do anything. And then Mayberry actually work on the sandstone subdivision here. They cut the trees inside our property here, so without even any communication. And then the road was blocked for more than a month. And then we were actually bypassed for a long time actually. So my question for the township board member is the planning commission here is, how can the township ensure the commitment from the contractor and then for their project here is, what are the minimum impact to our current residents? And then we always appreciate the new in development for the to make our township better here. But I do not see the actually the benefit for us here right now. And then my daughter even asked actually Daddy, will they build a new playground or park here? I said they're going to build apartment here. So that's why here's for us is we strongly against this project here. That's my comments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's just gonna take me a second to page through all these. Okay, next we have Ms. Jessie Adler. You are now able to speak with the Planning Commission.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Jessie Adler. I'm at 1580 Hillside Drive, and I am a board member of the Forest Hills Homeowners Association.
Okay, go ahead.
Similar to the previous speaker's remarks, I also am talking about the rezoning tonight, and you'll hear me during that comments as well. But in general, I've been before this commission many times before, and the remarks always seem to be very similar, and the results, unfortunately, always seem to be very similar. And that is, this township has a master plan, but unfortunately, we don't seem to be following that master plan. And every time I turn around, we've decided to rezone or special use permit or special wetlands permit or something. And we are not following the master plan. And I'm beginning to be concerned about why we even bother to have one. And as the previous speaker said, we've been watching the development across the way from us, the La Fontaine development that is unfortunately apparently now no longer happening. The Silverstone Estates, which we were originally told there would be no development on the east side of Powell Road, and the continued destruction of our green space, our trees, our wetlands, our forests, our pretty much everything that makes this township the reason that people want to live here. And all of those facts are laid out in the master plan, and yet time after time, we are considering all of these different proposals that completely goes against that. And it would be nice if we could have more parks and more playgrounds and more green space. And I'm really sick and tired of hearing about how many deer crashes we have in deer in our neighborhoods when they were perfectly fine living in the woods that we had provided for them. But we no longer have those woods because now we have an empty vacant lot or these housing complexes that are sitting half vacant. So I'm just asking you to reconsider all of the, or just please consider the master plan and what we're trying to do for this township and why people want to live here. And it's great. If we want more residents to move in, I'm fine with that, but let's have some real consideration for just how we're using that land, and let's have as much green space as possible and not all these buildings with cement and sidewalk and, parking carports and all of those things. So I'm against the rezoning for that reason. I'd like to see a more thorough thought process about what we're going to put in that space, as well as the traffic considerations, both on Powell and Central Park / Grand River, because until we can get a green arrow in all 4 directions at the intersection of Powell and Grand River, we should not be putting any more residential traffic in that area. So thanks very much, and I will talk to you again later.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Jessie. Okay, next I had Ms. Cecilia Kramer. Cecilia, you're on with the Planning Commission.
Cecilia, make sure you unmute yourself, please.
Like that? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I am a techno. So this has all been very new to me. My name is Cecilia Kramer, 4560 Oakwood, here in beautiful Okemos. And I would like to urge you to pay attention and review Jessie Adler's letter, which she has submitted to your packets there. She's done a very thoughtful analysis of the situation. And I would agree with, 98% of everything that she's saying there. I have a slightly different view with the fact that I do think that we are going to have to be facing more, the need for more upscale rental housing, not public housing projects, but upscale rental. Mostly because number one, the COVID, has had people losing their jobs, losing their homes. Federal monies are discontinued. Student loan debts have affected a number of 20, 30 somethings. We've got downsizing seniors. And in our subdivision, we've noticed that a lot with the smaller ranch homes being scooped up before the sales for sale sign has even been in the yard for a day. Minimum wage jobs are keeping people's incomes terribly low, and requiring two wage earners or several jobs to keep do a living. And of course, healthcare. If there is no healthcare, there's people are having to deal with an extraordinary ill health family members, and that's costing, forcing them into bankruptcy. But having said that, I would like to have a project that is good looking. Clearly, there's going to be some project here from the Martha Mertz days. There has been this situation has been developing with all of that being filled in there. And while I don't necessarily disagree with the rental housing, it needs to be upscale. So I would put it on larger, requiring for more open
30
space.
seconds.
Okay. And I don't want to have the rental housing turning into condominiums like our Walden Ponds did down here. Wetlands needs to be not counted as open space. Those things can't be used or made into a park or playground. Those wetlands need to be sacrosanct. And basically the ratio of green to brown and gray needs to be moved more toward the green side.
That's your time, Cecilia. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you very much.
Okay, the last person we haven't heard from is Cindy. No, it didn't. Sorry, I didn't get to Cindy here. Sorry, Cindy, 1 second. By the time we figure Zoom out, we'll all be back in person, right? Okay, Cindy, you're on with the Planning Commission.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I totally agree with the second speaker, the lady.
Cindy, I'm sorry. Can you state your full name and address for the record, please?
You're right. You're right. Okay. Cindy Liu, and the right address is 1575 Maiden Lane.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm also here to against that rezoning request 20050. I totally agree with the second speaker. We have a plan. The reason we move in here is we like those rich natural resource and the space, the quiet place in Okemos, even though Okemos is notoriously crowded. So to see that proposal to change the single family home into apartments, that's just very disappointing, and I don't think that fits into this design. And also, since we already bought the land, build a house, and living here, and we don't, I hope the committee can at least hear and consider our what we come from and consider our opinion. I just think rezoning those single house into the multi-units will damage our property value and make it more crowded, and just doesn't fit into my vision when I bought this place, when I move into. So so anyway, that's my opinion. I'm against that rezoning, and I hope you guys can seriously listen to us and consider our opinions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Cindy.
Okay, it looks like we've got a couple more queued up here. We have Jody Emerson. Okay, you're on with the Planning Commission. Be sure to unmute yourself and state your name and address before you begin your remarks.
Thank you. I'm Jody Emerson at 4375 Arbor Drive. I have previously written a letter that should be enclosed in your packet. I'm also on the Forest Hills Homeowners Association board. I'd like to just bring back some safety issues between the issue of pedestrian traffic on Grand River Road. There's no crosswalks quite nearby. The rate of speed is excessive, even though it's listed as, I believe, 50 miles per hour there on Grand River. With children, the potential to cross to go to school at Cornell Woods, those things really need to have an impact study. Other than that, we're also going to discuss a little bit more about renters. If you turn this into a rental property, you generally don't see people that have an enterprise rental car washing their car. So I do think that this could be a beautification issue. You might want to set things back differently, create a park in the front. If it's going to be built, you might want to, instead of do heavy density, maybe make it a moderate density for traffic issues, exiting onto Powell Road. The small homes that are so close to the road right there, issues with exiting onto Central Park, making a right turn only so nobody crosses that traffic. It really needs to be evaluated to exit onto Grand River. I would want to get the county involved in that, because we only get traffic lights after somebody is killed. And you can research that. That's pretty much a fundamental in any county, state you're in. Traffic lights are hard to come by until there's a death. So I would really implore you to think about traffic routing in your next plan. In my letter, it talks about sewer and water issues, but I think it's more of a safety issue, especially if there's going to be children living there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jody.
Our last, well, so far, our last comment is from Raji Upal. And I'll find you in a second. Okay, Raji, you're on with our Planning Commission.
Don't forget to unmute.
Do you have me now?
Yes.
Awesome. I apologize if I'm doing this inappropriately. I wasn't sure if we're supposed to speak at our petition or speak at this time. Am I doing it at the right time?
You can speak at this time, or you can speak at the public hearings, or both, whichever you'd like.
Well, I like
Raji, Raji, your opportunity is you will have an opportunity when we get to the public hearing as the applicant for the rezoning.
You got it. I'll just kind of try and keep it brief and just give you a quick overview, and then I'll be quiet. My name is Raji Uppal. I live at 6133 Cottage Drive in Hazlet, Michigan. I'm a principal of DTN Management Company that is doing business in the greater Lansing area for over 50 years. We have done a few of these kind of developments in the greater Lansing area that we are proposing here. The one that we're proposing here is a mixed-use development in which we put a large number of single-family homes that buffer along the single-family homes that are owned currently, mixed in with quite a few townhomes. Some of the townhomes are even universal design, where you actually have access for people that need assistance getting in and out of their place. I'm not sure if I'm saying it exactly right, but universal design meaning easily accessible. None of the buildings that we're talking about here are over 2 stories. We have built stuff at Aspen Lakes and at the quarry, Aspen Lakes at Holt, and at the quarry in DeWitt, if people would like to go look at our developments. Even as a matter of fact, in the quarry building or development, we bought 5 acres adjacent to make it a park, where we added pickleball courts, playgrounds, dog parks, walking areas, place for soccer and things of that nature. So we are very supportive of the things that people are talking about. The big difference here from what we're talking about and what people are used to here is this is a renter by choice, but they are the same people. And what do I mean by that? Their incomes are similar. They have the same kind of jobs. They just don't necessarily have a job that they think is going to stay here for 5 years, so they don't want to buy a home. But they want the same assurances that they would in having a home, but be able to lease it so that they have some flexibility. And so part of this project is really to bring in that diversity. We hope that it helps. It brings in these other communities, people that go to the schools. It brings in people who work for Michigan State. It brings in a lot of support that comes in there and has significant economic impact to the area, where we believe that the impact, based on some of the studies we've seen, is north of $25 million per year of economic participation from the residents that live there, and helping and produces a tax revenue base of about $2 million. So we think that it all supports economically the area, but more than that, we think it supports the diversity of the area. And I just wanted to share that briefly, and then I can get into any details as we go down further.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time, please raise your hand or call in. Once again, the phone number is 517-349-1232. Stephen, do we have anyone on the phone lines?
There are no calls at this time, sir.
Thank you. No one else's hand raised. So at this time, we'll move on from public comments to agenda item number 3, which is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve? Agenda? Sorry, I didn't see where that is. That Commissioner McConnell? Thank you. Do we have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Cordell. Any discussion on the agenda at this time? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the motion carries. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, approval of the minutes. We have one set of meeting minutes from our September 28th, 2020 regular meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Primo. Any discussion or additions or changes to the minutes? It was a long time ago, it feels like. Commissioner McConnell, our resident minutes expert.
Yeah, I love minutes. Item 8A in the Planning Commission discussion, right about the middle of that bullet list, says amenities enhance the public perception. And I was trying to work out what we might have been talking about. Does that mean public benefit? Is that what we were trying to say there?
Without going back to that part of the meeting, I'm just not sure. We have an admin staff that does the minutes and she watches them. So that, I'm assuming that must have come up in some phrase at the time.
Well, it's not major enough to necessarily require amendment. But I
mean, contextually, I think perhaps participation, but again, I would have to go back and watch the meeting again it's been 6 weeks now, so I couldn't say for sure. Any other discussion or changes on the minutes? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. I move on to agenda item number 5, communications. We had 4 communications in our packet. Thank you to everyone who took time to communicate with the Planning Commission. We did all take a look at those communications as presented. Peter, was there anything that was presented to us late that did not make it into the packet?
No, you have everything that I received.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to agenda item 6A, which is our first public hearing of the evening. This is rezoning number 20050 DTN 2013 LLC to rezone 3 parcels totaling 31.63 acres located on the east side of Central Park Drive, west of Powell Road, and north of Grand River Avenue from RA, single family medium density, to RD, multiple family, maximum 8 dwelling units per acre. And we will go ahead and turn things over to our principal planner, Peter Menser.
Everybody, public hearing tonight for the rezoning. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go to another screen. Oh, thanks, Stephen. This always takes a couple seconds.
And we can see your screen, Peter.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So while I'm waiting for this to come up, hopefully everybody in the audience has a chance to pull up tonight's Planning Commission meeting packet. I'm having trouble with this. Oh, come on. Sorry, this isn't. I got a little bit different look to my screen than I'm used to. So the meeting packet's on the township website right now. It's under the meetings tab if you're on the home page. And you'll go to that and click through to the Planning Commission meeting. You'll see there's a memo, a huge packet, but in there you'll see a memo from me that starts on, well, I can't see what page it starts on. I have so many screens in front of me. Sorry about that.
Page 24 of the PDF, I think.
Yes, you're right. Thank you very much for that. So the memo starts on page 24, and I'm going to be going through that here while we're talking. So tonight's public hearing, rezoning 20050 to request a rezone 31.63 acres. It's on the east side of Central Park Drive, west of Powell Road and north of Grand River. The request is to go from RA single family medium density to RD multiple family with a maximum of 8 dwelling units per acre. So I just mentioned the comment about the meetings tab on the township website. It's really important that you find that staff memo because it's going to answer a lot of the questions. It actually addresses some of the things that were brought up earlier tonight. And after tonight, you'll find the meeting packet under the Planning Commission section of the website. You'll have to navigate to, I think it goes by year, and then you'll have to find the meeting for tonight. So that's where you'll see it afterwards. Format of the public hearing is the staff summary, which is happening right now. The applicant will be available to make a short presentation and answer any questions. There's public comment specific to this topic only. And it's just like we did before, 3 minutes max per person. Use the raise hand feature, same timing, 3-minute limit, all that. So, and after that, there'll be a period of Planning Commission discussion during which they may have questions for me. They may have questions for the applicant, but there's not, there won't be an opportunity to dialogue with the planning commissioners. The staff focus, I always say this during rezoning, but the staff focus is on the rezoning, the staff and planning commission. And you'll see when it gets to the township board, it's the same thing. We're only talking about the rezoning right now, not the potential future development. It's human nature to have a lot of questions about what might happen down the road. And with this rezoning, you're going to see a lot more than you typically would because they do have a concept plan for this area. But that's not under scrutiny tonight, and there's not any action being taken on that plan. We're solely focused on rezoning. That's going to be a theme throughout the evening here. When the development process is proposed, or development project is proposed, there will be a separate process for that. So the request summary, there's 3 parcels total. It's really 2.5 that are proposed for rezoning. The entire rezoning is 31.63 acres. Property has frontage both on Central Park Drive and Powell Road. Current zoning's RA, proposed that's wrong, it's RD. I made this really quickly. So in the staff memo, you see this location map. In the red dashed line, you see the area that's proposed for rezoning. And if you take a look at parcel 22-252-005, that's the eastern half, or approximately half, maybe 2/3 of a parcel that's has split zoning. The reason you see parcel numbers is that these parcels are not developed, so they've never been issued an address. So we refer to them by the rather cumbersome parcel number 22-so-and-so. So that's why you're seeing that in this particular request. General rezoning process, application filed with our department. We do provide notices. Some of you may have received a letter from me, and we do post a notice on the property. In this case, we posted one both on Central Park Drive and Powell Road. So the general process from here, after tonight's public hearing, at our next meeting on the 23rd, the Planning Commission will likely make a recommendation on the request. And by the end of this evening, you'll know more about that. Then we move on to the Township Board. Township Board will go through a similar process without the public hearing, but they will discuss the request over the course of probably 2 meetings. In this case, Planning Commission is advisory on rezonings, so they're making a recommendation. Township Board is the final decision maker. So once they've made their decision, that's the action. And then it's a 2-step approval process. If the board does choose to rezone this property, there'll be 2 meetings, at which one would be introduction, the other would be final adoption. So in this request, the applicant has offered conditions on the rezoning. The conditions are voluntary. They're offered by the applicant. They run with the land and they apply to not only current owners, but also future owners of the property. So they stay with the land. So an applicant that offers these conditions today, they stay with the land, whether or not they continue on to develop a project or do anything with the property. So the conditions offered with this rezoning are to limit the number of dwelling units to no greater than 220 units. There would be no fewer than 25 single-family dwelling units. No buildings would be greater than 2 stories, and enclosed garages will be provided for every dwelling unit. So these, we're going to get a lot more into detail on some of the conditions later on here. I want to talk really quickly about the 2020 zoning amendment that kind of made this project possible. Earlier this year, which sounds like an eon ago, the Planning Commission and the board heard a zoning amendment and what it ultimately allowed to do, among some other things, but it took a look at our multiple family zoning district, which is divided into 4. There's RDD, RD, RC, and RCC, and it goes up from 0, to up in density as you go to RCC. I think is at 34 dwelling units per acre. But it allowed a mix of single detached structures and multiple family dwellings. Previously, you could not have that mix of single family. And then they also established a 50% maximum standard for the number of single family dwellings in a multifamily project. So it couldn't just be all single family. It has an upper limit to no more than half. Concept plan, I talked about that really briefly a second ago. There's going to be a separate development review process for that. Ultimately, if the project, as shown on the concept plan, would be developed and if the rezoning was approved, a special use permit would be required. That process would follow similarly what we're doing with the rezoning, the public hearing, notices, Planning Commission consideration, Township Board, because and also the buildings, the special use permit's also required if a building or group of buildings is greater than 25,000 square feet. So really this process, we're not focused on development plan. You're really Planning Commission and the board. They're focused only on whether or not this property whether or not RD zoning is appropriate on the site. Future land use map, our future land use map from our 2017 master plan shows the property designated mostly as R3 residential, 1.25 to 3.5 dwelling units per acre. As I note in the memo, there's a small part of the western portion of that one parcel has split zoning that does have a commercial designation in the master plan. So the proposed zoning to RD, which is 8 units per acre, would be inconsistent with our future land use map designation. And you can see in the staff memo, there is a future land use map on screen now. It's yellow is that R3 category. Pink is commercial. To the east across Powell is R1 residential 0 to 0.5 dwelling units per acre. And then to the north where Central Park Estates is, that's all R2. Zoning, current zoning is RA. Proposed is RD. What does that mean? The letters and numbers don't mean anything necessarily, but the zoning district does establish the minimum lot size, the minimum lot frontage that's allowed in a zoning district, but also the allowed land uses. And we're going to touch on that later as well. So in this case, the parcels, they meet the minimum frontage and lot area requirements for both the current and proposed zoning districts. You'll see in the staff memo on page 4, there's a zoning map. Current zoning is RA. You'll see that split piece with the RD and RA zoning. Across the street to the east, you see RAA with a little asterisk. That's the Silverstone development that's underway right now. The star, the asterisk means that it was a conditional zoning because there was a limit, I believe, on like 1 unit per acre. There's some sort of density limit in that case. So you would see a similar asterisk if this rezoning is approved because of the condition. Wetlands, there are wetlands on the site. There's an attachment in the staff memo that lays out wetlands better than I could have drawn them on the screen. So there are 8 wetlands on the site. 3 of those are regulated by Meridian Township. There's a 4th wetland that would require Township Board essentiality determination, and I detail that in the memo. In my time at the township, and the director may agree with me, I haven't seen the board say that a wetland is not essential, so I'm assuming that 4th wetland is going to be regulated. And what that means to us for a future project would be the requirement of a 40-foot setback around the wetland. So rezoning review criteria, what is the Planning Commission and the board considering when they make decisions like this? They look at all the uses allowed by right and by special use permit in the current and proposed zoning districts. And then the reasons for rezoning are listed on page 2 of the rezoning application, and all of that is in the meeting packet for tonight. And then as well as the applicant responses to those reasons, which is really a big part of review criteria. So in the memo, I go into detail and list some of the uses that are allowed by right and the uses that are allowed by special use permit in both of those districts. So you'll want to confer that list as the meeting goes on here. Development options, something that inherently comes up during rezoning projects, and what can you do with this property? I'm trying to head this off a little bit by bringing some of that out in the staff memo now, with a giant disclaimer that I'll touch on in a second. So if the property right now, it's zoned RA, their options for development are a platted subdivision, a PUD, a PRD, which is a planned residential development, and there are meets and bounds lots, which is just like a lot with frontage on a street and no special designation, not platted, which we don't see a lot of around the township anymore. Under RD, there are a couple different options. Really, 2-family dwellings, I think, are allowed by right, and then a mix of single duplexes and multiple family dwellings, kind of like the applicant is offering right now. The density estimates, you'll see what I've attempted to do is go through in the memo and provide some estimates for various scenarios for density. The proposed RD zoning, we have, in this case, we have a concept plan. They did a survey, they have the wetlands, so we have a little bit more of a straight idea on how that might go. And we estimated the maximum number of lots in the future development there would be 258. I think that's important to consider, particularly in context of the conditions that are offered by the applicant, because they offered to limit the number of units in a future project. But I want to throw just a really big disclaimer out there that I made my estimates just for example purposes, just so people can have an idea. The numbers I'm using are not 100% accurate. I mean, it's things like topography, soils, utilities, site layouts that I just don't have any information on right now. So please consider them for what they are, and they're only estimates. So future development considerations, a lot of this has to do with what are the provisions of our RD ordinance and that might impact future projects. And just so we all know, there is a 50-foot setback from adjacent single-family residential zoning districts. So that's for all buildings and multifamily developments. This property would have single-family zoning to the north, south, and east. So that 50-foot setback would be there. There's a required 80-foot front yard setback from the right-of-way, center of the right-of-ways on Central Park Drive and Powell. And then in an RD development, all buildings, including accessory buildings, it can't cover more than 35% of the land, but also that a minimum of 35% of the total area, exclusive of drives and parking areas, must remain as open space. And then distance between buildings, there are a requirement for distance between buildings. That's 25 feet for any dwelling, any building with 2 or more units, and then 10 feet for just single family dwellings. What's next? Further discussion, possible and probable action at the Planning Commission's next meeting on November 23. Please keep in mind no additional notices or letters will be sent out. The only thing that will go out is an email for the meeting packet to the Planning Commission. Staff will be preparing a resolution for consideration based on this discussion tonight. And I do always emphasize that planning staff is available tonight, but also in between meetings. If you have any questions about these projects, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm easy to find. You see my phone number and email here. You can find me on the township website. That's it for me for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. It's a thorough presentation as always. Next up is our applicant, is that right? We spoke with him earlier, so if we can get him promoted one more time, Peter, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm going to promote Chuck Holman as a panelist to the group here, and then Raji is on, or he was, I don't see him right this moment. Oh, he's
there
Raji's
too,
here, and we'll move him too. If there's Chuck or Raji, if there's anyone else, just let me know.
And gentlemen, make sure you unmute yourselves so we can hear you, please.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
And, you know, in terms of the technical details of what's going on, Chuck will probably be better to answer what we're trying to do. But our intentions for rezoning this property really is to put a renter by choice in a luxury kind of property for the Okemos area. We have done it in Holt at Delhi Township, as I was saying earlier, at Aspen Lakes. And we've also done it at the quarry more recently. The intent behind what we're building there is to take the products that we've had used in the past at Aspen Lakes and the quarry and bring them to Meridian Township. And we've had tremendous success where we've been building 2-story, 10-unit buildings where there are garages that are attached to each one of those units. Some are 2 cars, some are 1.5 cars, some are 1 car. They vary between 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms typically. We're trying to bring a housing type of product that we have done at Aspen Lakes. It is a single family housing, and that's why we're offering the 25 single family houses along there. And it's really to buffer the single family housing that's sitting adjacent to it. We also are putting in a townhome product that we are building currently out in DeWitt. And a partner of ours has built also throughout Grand Rapids area. And those products are usually 4plexes, although I think we might have put a couple of 6plexes in here, but in general, they're 4plexes that just fit better in a couple of spots. But the idea behind those is those are often single story with a flat where you have universal access along with those homes also. And in addition, we do some 2-story homes that will be maybe more for young professionals and families, you know, in terms of that type of stuff. We have found that there's a tremendous need for this type of product. That people no longer used to think that, now myself included, my first job when I was working at Hughes Electronics, the first question I asked was, what's my pension? And why did I ask that and ask that? Because I thought I was working there for life. And today, I really don't think that, unfortunately, that interaction isn't as true as it used to be. And so we have a little bit more of a crowd where people are professionals, but their jobs and things change over a 2 to 5 year period and often move locations. So the intention behind this is to provide housings like people that are at the Frib, people that work at Michigan State, people that work at Jackson Life and other professional areas that we have, to offer them a lifestyle where it's maintenance free and also provides the same type of living as if you were in a home, a townhome, or in this case, I would even call it a single-story condo. We are trying to do things as green as possible. We like to put in electric charging stations in each of the garages as we get more green and start doing, hopefully, I mean, I'm not going to sell Tesla, but cars like Tesla that are at the forefront of that technology. We did our best to accommodate and work within the wetlands that were established. And a little bit of backstory on that wetlands: when the senior housing was built Unfortunately, what it did was they blocked some water that created things that were uplands that turned into this transitional wetland. And even though we talk about quality of wetland, it was a mistake that someone could have put a pipe through and solved that when they had originally done that development. They did not. And as part of that, we're still trying to work around that wetland and accommodate and support that. We think that this is going to be a tremendous asset to the community. At the places that we're doing it now, we have children that are going to schools and support the school districts. We have people that are choosing to live there. The median income in our properties that we're talking about there are north of $8,000 a month. So these are not people that couldn't go buy a home tomorrow. These are people that are choosing not to buy a home, but want the comforts of a home. This is a renter by choice. And so we really hope that that'll help do these types of things along those lines. We've had tremendous success with this, and we live in this township, and we look at what's going on with COVID. And as we talk about COVID, each one of these things that's going on has an independent entry into each one of your units. So you're not in a common hallway. So that if people wanted that isolation, I heard some discussion about seniors. We're right next to a seniors home that's adjacent to us. We're trying to build product that's consistent with that. That's the intent of what our intentions of what we're trying to bring to the township. We want to bring it to Meridian Township because we've seen how well it's worked in other parts of the community. And we believe in our home, we haven't even done this. So we're trying to get, as you guys are familiar with it, at Newton Point. We're trying to do that for the Haslick School District and here for the Okemos School District. And our intentions are to try and make this as good as we can. And I do have some numbers that say economic impact, but that's secondary in nature. But there is tremendous purchasing power and tax base that comes from this. We pay tax as a non-homestead, and there'll be significant tax base that comes to the township that'll help support the general fund. And in addition to that, we're going to have a lot of people that have purchasing power. And I've heard numbers as much as 150 jobs are supported from this community. If I go to some websites that kind of produce a number based on what you're building, in generalities, it produces 150 local jobs around the community based on doing this. The construction, the number that they came up with was north of 500 jobs. And we are going to have 5 to 10 jobs sitting there supporting this community. And we really work on building our communities as a lifestyle. We are making these parks public forward, or these common areas public facing is maybe the better word for it, with the intention that it's not just for us to use, other people can use these amenities also. And we see that happening in Corey. When I go to the pickleball courts and I see someone else using it, first someone said, hey, they might not be a resident. My answer is not that. My answer is, boy, this is good for the community. Isn't that exciting? They're going to come live in our community. So our intentions of our amenities and the things that we put forth on our communities speak for themselves. And as I was telling you earlier, we have about 50 years of experience in doing this in the greater Lansing area. And we are focusing on a purely conventional market, meaning this is not focused on students in any way, shape, or form. This is directed more towards income qualified and people that support that. It's not that we're opposed to students and we house many students, but this particular development is going to be more accommodating towards young professionals, seniors, and families. At least I was trying to give you a general overview of what this project is. And if anyone has more questions as to what we're trying to do, we believe this is a good transition. I know this property, they've looked at big boxes on this property in the past. Although I don't know if it ever would have got through or not, we're trying to do something that transitions this. And as we look at the economic circumstances that are happening throughout the township, with Meridian Mall struggling and others, we want to be parts to try to help the solution. And we believe that housing is part of that solution that will help professionals that want to live here. It's going to help that community, the aging community. And that's what we're seeing at DeWitt. We have been building these townhomes and duplexes that we just started. And I can't tell you how many people come by and say, I'm going to someday want to sell my home and I'm going to be a snowbird. When can I get into this? When's it available? And so we're getting tremendous demand for this type of product. And we just want to bring it to Meridian Township. I hope that helps at least describe it, but we're not going to be a car dealer. We're not going to be someone who's not from out of town. We're not going to be these other things. And I'm not saying anything negative about any of those things. I'm just telling you, we're part of the community. We just believe this is a part of the community that needs to be enhanced and provides diversity and health to the Meridian Township area.
Thank you very much. Chuck, I see we've added you as well. Are you hoping to add anything at this time, or are you just here for questions later?
Yes, thank you. This is Chuck Holman. I live at 1317 Coolidge Road, Vice President of Construction Development for DTN. And there's not a lot to add to what Raji has said. He made it fairly clear. But I do want to recall that we were with you back in 2018, and we had a concept plan back then. And I recall, and you probably do too, at that time, the plan included 330 units. Things didn't go extremely well at that meeting, but we listened very carefully to what suggestions the Planning Commission made. And now, as was mentioned earlier, there's less than 220 units on this plan. None of it's more than 2 stories in height. And it is transitional. Near Central Park Drive, we have what they actually call big house product, which are 2-story with 10 units in those, all with garages. And it transitions to 4-unit buildings and then ultimately to single-family dwellings along Powell Road. So it's a transitional neighborhood. The other thing I wanted to clarify, there is about 5 acres of wetland on the site, and we were very careful in maintaining that wetland and actually using it as an amenity to the development for the residents and for the public in general. Other than that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chuck. All righty, we'll move on then to our public comment section. As before, you can use, if you are in the Zoom meeting, you can use the raise hand feature to indicate that you wish to speak on this topic. Also, you can call us at 517-349-1232. The same rules apply to the previous public comment. You'll be limited to 3 minutes, and we do ask that you provide your name and address, even if you have before, for the public record. I will point out that for this public comment, you are restricted to speaking on the topic at hand. So please limit your remarks to this topic. With that said, we'll give everyone a moment to raise their hands or call in, and then we'll get started. Looks like we do have a couple of hands raised here.
Yeah,
Peter,
okay,
we'll
while we're waiting, I'm gonna go ahead and put Ms. Jessie Adler through. Same process as before for this round. All right, Jesse, you're on.
All right. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Just
Yes.
clarifying.
Yep.
All right. Jesse Adler, 1580 Hillside Drive, member of the Forest Hills Homeowners Association. Reiterating my comments that we suggest that you vote no on this rezoning. It is inconsistent with both the master plan and the development around it. As you saw from Peter's remarks, pretty much the entire northeast and south side of it is also RA. And in keeping with that development and the township's master plan, the RA designation seems to be the best land use fit for this particular parcel. I don't really understand the need for the transition housing. We have, I mean, the transition in meaning from like 8 units to single family. That whole area is nothing but single family right now, and I think that is perfectly an acceptable use. I do understand the concept of, you know, having some more of that housing that's available and affordable. But I kind of have to take issue with the comments about the families coming and going because of job situations. And I'm not sure that's what we really want for our community. Don't we want people to stay here and to live and work in this community? And providing that rental housing doesn't really seem to fit, again, with the master plan of providing our neighborhoods and, you know, keeping them safe. So just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was an interesting comment from the developer. As far as, goal 2, preserve open space and natural areas and conserving wetlands, I think it's a red flag anytime that we're discussing dealing with wetlands, and that should be an automatic no in terms of how you have to deal with that. So just kind of taking that into consideration, the RA single family medium density would be much more conducive to working around those wetlands on that space and not intruding and dealing with fertilizer and pesticides and all of the things that go into those, landscaping that's potentially going to impact our ecosystem. Objective B of goal 1, ensure new residential developments meet high standards of visual attractiveness. I'm not sure that all these, even though they're only 2-story, all these units, I've looked up the ones in DeWitt and they're literally like 10 feet from each other. And I know that's the minimum, but that's not really very attractive and friendly. And and minimizing erosion and the intrusion of roads, pathways, you can read it for yourself what the goal says, but none of that is going to be happening with this development. And I know we're only supposed to be talking about the rezoning, but you can't consider the rezoning without considering what the rezoning is for and all those uses. And in this case, all of that. So I've talked about the traffic study. You can read my additional notes in the letter I sent, and I hope you please do that so you can deal that. I'm not really sure how the sustainable growth practices and the parks and the diverse park system is really going. I don't think the public is going to walk through this development to participate in those activities. And I only see a tiny playground in here. So again, I would consider that you please look at keeping this RA and keeping it in use with the houses that are already around it for their sake and for the rest of the townships. Thank you.
That's time, Jesse. Thank you very much.
Okay, next we'll have Cecilia Kramer. Okay, Cecilia, you're on with the Planning Commission.
Okay, hello again, Cecilia Kramer, 4560 Oakwood here in Okemos. Just again, it's the density issue. This is a tremendously incredible increase in the amount of housing and stuff that you're putting on this property. It would not necessarily have to go to this sort of level of density if you would leave it at the RA zoning and make things a little bit, get rid of the 10 foot between the apartment or the units of the single units. Something that I thought was very difficult to imagine that you would use that. The public streets, I gather these are not going to be public streets, so therefore the public cannot come onto the property unless they're just to use the parks and the pickleball courts. And by and large, it is truly going to be spot development, which is with the surrounding parcels being at the RA level. And I would urge you to consider that very carefully before you would move ahead on the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Stephen, do we have anyone on the phones?
We've got one more on the.
Oh. Gosh, I'm
here.
sorry. I must have missed the hand.
No, Jack Zhang had his hand up.
Here he is.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, Jack, you're back out with the Planning Commission.
Oh, hi, my name is Jack. My daughter wants to talk, and she's 8 years old. And then her name's Meridian Zhang. And then what is our address? 4719 Power Road, Okemos. Go ahead, Ariana.
I was that you could build a park instead of a housing complex. I think that would make more people want to live here, and I think it would be more convenient for all the people and for the people to enjoy.
Thank you, Ariana.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Stephen, do we have anyone on
That's
the
all we've
phones?
got on Zoom at least.
There are no calls, sir.
All right, very good. Then we'll go ahead and wrap up our public comments portion of the public hearing and move on to Planning Commission discussion. And so at this time, we'll go ahead and open up the floor to planning commissioners with questions or points of discussion. And I see Commissioner Bloomer.
First of all, I want to apologize. My system at home crashed and I had to reset everything. That's why I left the meeting for a while. It occurs to me, one of the things that jumped out at me, I was stunned at the MDOT traffic assessment for that area. I had no idea it carried that heavy a load of traffic. I think it said 11,000 plus cars per day. It seems to me that building a moderate to heavy density development right fronting on that road could very well simply overwhelm the system at that location.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Bloomer. I also shared that concern. There's a lot of traffic, especially on Central Park, in and out. I don't travel down Powell very often, but certainly on Central Park, I'm there quite a bit. And yeah, it's always busy. It is. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Cordell.
Yes, thank you. I have a concern. Well, it's not in keeping with the master plan, which that's a critical problem with this. For rezoning, we can take in consideration. Well, we're not taking into consideration what kind of project it could be. That would be a subsequent step in it. So we're just looking at does that kind of zoning fit in the area? So the master incompatibility with the master plan is a concern. I'm also wondering about streets and traffic. Central Park is a collector, and I can see that. Apparently, Powell is classified as a collector. Was my reading of that correct, Principal Planner Menser?
Yeah, that's what I noted. That's what our street setback map has it classified as, and I noted that in the staff memo.
Okay, and it's 2-lane road. I mean, compared to Central Park, which is a busier street and has more width, I'm thinking that just in order to support a project like this, that you would have to, of course, not only improve it, but widen it.
I'm assuming that was a question for me.
Yes,
the question is about widening Powell Road for a future development. I'm not aware of any plans that would require that. Keeping in mind the rezoning first mindset, we will receive a more detailed traffic study if and when a development proposal is submitted for this property. So that would be one of the considerations that the consultant would look at, and we would also engage at that time with Ingham County Road Department officials to understand if there's a threshold for that or not. One thing I did note in the staff memo is a future project. As you may be aware, well, it hasn't started yet, but across the street at Silverstone, the board did require paving from their northern extent down to Grand River. My assumption is that the board will require a similar paving requirement for it to cover at least through, if you took a look at the concept plan, they showed a drive on Powell to the north of that. So there may also be paving for that. It's not a guarantee, but I would assume a similar provision requirement could come along.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. It seems like there would be demand and interest in such a development. I just don't believe that this is the place for it.
Thank you, Commissioner Cordell. Any other commissioners interested in providing any comments or questions or concerns? Commissioner McConnell.
Yeah, I would had the same concerns as Commissioner Cordell. When I read the application and staff memo, I'm finding it difficult to understand what is and is not consistent with the master plan. I'm reading that the current zoning is not consistent and that the new zoning would not be consistent. And I understand that the categories in the land use, future land use map and the current zoning don't match perfectly. But it feels to me like this is asking for a density that exceeds what the master plan envisioned. And if I'm understanding that correctly, then in my mind, that's a basis for seriously considering this rezoning. I have a similar issue with the traffic study. I'm reading a traffic study that looks at Central Park Drive as a 4-lane road. And I guess I'm not as familiar with the history of the project, of the proposals here. The cycling community would love to think of Central Park now as a 4-lane road because it's got 2 bike lanes and 2 motor vehicle lanes, right? It's that road has been reconfigured. It is no longer in that.
Has it been in that area?
Am I misunderstanding the location of the?
Maybe I didn't. Sorry, maybe I didn't notice it when I drove over there this weekend. But I thought it was still 4 in that section. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. Oh, I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads. So yeah, looks like it's two car lanes now. Is what I'm getting from all the shaking heads.
Yeah, and to me that's. Especially because it appears that the traffic study was updated this month. So to submit an application with a traffic study that misunderstands the configuration of the main entrance, to me is a fairly serious flaw in the application. Am I misunderstanding?
Well, I also made the same mistake relying on Google imagery because I haven't been out there recently. So that very well may what happened. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. Thank you for the clarification. I'm also very concerned about the other entrance to the property on Powell Road. The approach to Grand River southbound on Powell is a fairly steep incline, right? You come up to that intersection on a steep hill, and adding in and outbound traffic, okay, a southbound right turn onto Grand River westbound, fine. But if you're trying to go to Mason, I'm sorry, if you're trying to go to Williamston from Powell Road at rush hour with no signal, and I believe we heard this in our public comments, that's a real issue. So I have serious concerns with the traffic study and some of the claims about zoning, and those would make me unable to support the rezoning at this time.
Okay. I did see Commissioner Primo's hand. Commissioner Primo?
I was just going to say that the reconfiguration of Central Park Drive took place this summer. I mean, that's been in the last probably 3.5, maybe 4 months. So it may be that I don't know the timing of the traffic study, but that was a reconfiguration. They repaved and relined and reconfigured less than 6 months. Probably more like 3.
Memo, it says October 15th, revised November 6th, 2020.
There you go.
So that was all since that reconfiguration was done.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Bloomer.
I'd just like to tag on to the last thing that Commissioner Cordell said. I agree with her very much. This really is a very attractive project. Got a lot going for it. I agree with the developers that there probably is a significant demand for something like this. My objection is to the location of the project, not to the nature of the project itself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other thoughts, questions, or concerns? Commissioner Shrewsbury.
I actually just want to say ditto to Commissioner Bloomer. I was about to say that in response to Commissioner Cordell. I looking at the other developments that they referenced, it's hard to separate because we're not really looking at their plan right now. But it seems like a very good, solid plan. I do agree that there's probably a market in our community. I would love to see it somewhere. But again, I have concerns about this particular location. And that would give me pause to support a rezoning if this is what it's going to lead to.
Thank you, Commissioner Shrewsbury. Commissioner Richards?
Yeah, one clarification I guess I'd ask is of the 4 conditions that were offered, the plan that's proposed isn't one of the conditions. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, that's right. The rezoning is not conditioned on development using the plan.
Yeah.
That's
So,
been submitted.
Yeah, and so as much as, and most of the discussion, particularly by the applicant, was about the plan more than the rezoning. So that can be a little bit confusing, and I guess I want to reiterate that what we're considering is the rezoning. And so I have at this point, a hard time supporting the project, although I see it as a good project. And that's, that's the challenge here. And I almost wonder whether, the changing economic conditions might have us look at the future land use map in that general area to see if that's, if that is still consistent with what, is happening currently. Because I think it's, to me, a stretch to say that the rezoning itself, not looking at the project, meets the criteria and would fit. It's hard to find enough rationale, even though the project itself is a very good project and I think would be very good for the township. So I guess my approach might be to take a look at that future land use map. And I don't believe this will be the first time we would do that. We've looked at zoning amendments themselves when people bring projects that we really can't fit the project into the zoning amendment. So I guess that would be my approach, at least one suggestion.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Richards. Commissioner Trezise.
Yeah, and I appreciate the comments from the rest of the commissioners and agree with them. One thing I'm looking at is the density estimate and recognizing that Mr. Menzer's estimates were, shall we say, rough. I'm looking at the current zoning. If they went through a PUD, they could get up to 160 units there without changing the zoning. Now, that's an estimate. And I'm not sure that this wouldn't be a better project at 160 units rather than on 220.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Trezise. I agree with what's been said by my fellow commissioners here. I think that the project is really exciting. And would we be able to, consider that project as we're making our decision on the rezoning? I think that would certainly be a factor in favor of moving forward. But we do need to consider, that this runs with the land forever, and that this may not be, this may not even be developed in this way after it's rezoned. And so we have to restrict ourselves to viewing this in terms of, is this zoning appropriate or not? So I've got a couple of questions for Peter, I think first. The first is, what would be appropriate density zoning if you were to blank slate today into the R3 category? What would generally fit in there? Do you happen to, because we have R1, R2, R3 on our future land use map, and then we have RA, RAA, RC, RD, all sorts of other R designations. If you were to wipe away current zoning and just use the future land use map, what zoning categories would be appropriate to fit in there?
I think I understand your question. I'm gonna rely on the master plan. So in the master plan, there's a table that looks at correlation between the map and the zoning map and the future land use map. Under R3, it calls for RA, RB, and RX as being kind of the equivalent correlating districts.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, and so in addition to the fact that I don't believe the RD zoning to be appropriate and again consistent, as Peter mentioned with his staff memo, I also had concerns with some of the answers provided to the questions that are on page 2 of the rezoning request, because I didn't find any compelling argument to be made that the present zoning is unreasonable, right? There are arguments made, but I don't personally believe that they satisfied my need for those questions to be answered. And I think that there were some stronger answers given for why the new zoning was appropriate, but I don't believe it was enough for me get it over that hump into making it into a proposal for rezoning that I could support. Again, I like the concept of the development. I'd like to see this somewhere in our township. Know that that this requested rezoning is appropriate to move forward with at this time, just based on my review of just the rezoning request. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns from Planning Commission members?
Could I
Commissioner McConnell.
just maybe a bookmark for later? We don't need to get an answer this evening, but the applicant did make an assertion about a prior development adjacent that had inadequately designed stormwater, and I'd be interested in learning more about that history, not necessarily this evening.
Okay, thank you.
I made note of that. It came up in a previous meeting. I'll see what I can find. What I've been told so far is there would be a wetland use permit proposed for this property, so we would certainly find out a lot more at that time, but I'll see what we've got.
Thank you.
Any other questions, thoughts, or concerns? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on then to our straw poll. A note for those watching in either at home or in the Zoom meeting. The straw poll is merely a tool that we use to provide Peter with guidance when he is crafting his resolution for our next meeting on whether or not we are leaning toward supporting or leaning toward opposing a particular proposal. It is not a vote. It is merely just guidance for Peter. With that said, we'll go ahead and go to Commissioner McConnell.
I am not currently supportive of this application.
Okay, Commissioner Primo.
No.
Commissioner Cordell.
No, I cannot support the rezoning.
Commissioner Shrewsbury.
Also no.
Commissioner Richards.
No.
Commissioner Bloomer.
I would vote no.
Commissioner Trezise.
No.
And as I mentioned before, while I support the concept plan, I would vote no on this rezoning as it currently is before us. So Peter, I think you've got our guidance as to how the sense of the Planning Commission on this issue. And with that said, we will go ahead and close our public hearing at 8:19 p.m. All right, we'll move on then to public hearing, our second public hearing of the evening. This is agenda item 6B, commercial planned unit development number 20-13034, Meridian Mall Limited Partnership, amend commercial planned unit development approval to construct a 2,500 square foot bank with 3 drive-up ATMs at 1982 Grand River Avenue. We'll give Peter a moment to catch up on his Zoom meeting maintenance here before we have him jump into his presentation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. Okay, thank you, everybody. Second public hearing of the evening, similar, not similar, exactly the same as the first, different requests, same procedures. So this is an amendment to commercial, the project is Commercial Plan Unit Development 20-13034. It's an amendment to a Commercial Plan Unit Development from 2013, which was 13034. This is the 2020 amendment to that. So this is a project proposed by Meridian Mall Limited Partnership, and the request is to amend the existing CPUD at the mall to construct a 2,500 square foot bank. So back in 2013, when the mall came along, not when the mall came along, when Gordman's was actually constructed as an addition to the mall, at that time, mall put the entire mall site under Commercial Plan Unit Development. What that did was it essentially kind of established a plan for the entire property, along with all the corresponding totals relating to parking and impervious surface coverage and everything like that. Anything that comes along outside of that would have to be, that wasn't shown on the plan, would have to be amended. So in this case, they're showing now a bank building out east of the drive, the main drive on Grand River. So that's the reason why this is happening in the format that it's happening in terms of an amendment to a CPUD. So the other amendment was in 2019, the township and the mall swapped properties to get the farmers market site, which hopefully you've all had a chance to check out. But part of that deal was removal of I think it was a 2.43 acre parcel from the mall, and the township gave the mall, gave's not the right word, but transferred a 4 acre parcel for that, or vice versa. I think I messed that up. That doesn't matter. That's what happened in the previous amendment. So public hearing, we went over this before. Everything I'm talking about is in the staff memo. It's on the meetings tab tonight. Process similar to what we just talked about with rezonings. Public notice led to this evening. Planning Commission's advisory. Public hearing, in this case, the public hearing will also be made at the township board level, preceded by notices, and then discussion and decision at the board. So this is the very beginning of this process. Future land use map, the entire site shown as mixed use core. Zoning map is all C3. That's more regional commercial. Project overview. As I mentioned, construct a 2,500 square foot bank with 3 drive-up ATMs. Banking is changing. These are ATMs, not the traditional setup with the window and the tellers. I have some photos that show it, but apparently how this works is you would pull up and there's video screens and you can talk to probably anybody in the bank. So for a drive-through, we do require 3 stacking spaces, so space for 3 cars, but also a bypass lane. In this case, the applicants requested a waiver. So remember in CPUDs, much like MUPUDs, there are waivers instead of variances. It all takes place inside of the CPUD consideration. So in this case, they're asking for a waiver for the bypass lane. I believe there's a letter in your packet that provides a little bit of information, but the applicants are on the call as well and can address that in a minute here. As an amenity, they're showing, if you take a look at the plans, they're showing a 7-foot wide pedestrian bicycle connection between the township's pathway along Grand River and the mall, the outer ring road of the mall property. So that's shown on the plan. CPUD review criteria. The Planning Commission doesn't see a lot of these, so I want to make sure to emphasize this. We have the minimum CPUD performance objectives. What we've done in the staff memo on page 4 is attempt to provide some feedback on, we list those and then provide some feedback or show how the plan does or does not meet those objectives. The project is required to provide an amenity, and the ordinance says 1 or more. So in this case, for the mall, just for this particular amendment, they provided 1 additional amenity. That is that connection I mentioned a minute ago. And then also you're going to be looking at a summary of the project's general consistency with the CPUD ordinance. which we have detailed in the staff memo. Public hearing is tonight. Planning Commission will make a recommendation at their next meeting on November 23. We'll have another public hearing at the Township Board. I don't have a date for that yet, but we will be sending notices out at some point. And then they will talk about that for at least 2 meetings. And then following any approvals from the township, we would go through a process called site plan review. That's at the staff level. Well, we do have a public hearing. It's not before the Planning Commission or the board. It's typically during the weekday in an afternoon. And at that time, there's a large focus on utilities, but we also look at confirming agency approvals. So in some projects, it could be a road department, county road department, drain office, that kind of thing. So I just want to provide, that's just a very brief overview. If anyone has any questions, I know that there is members of the development team on the call tonight. So when we get to that part, you'll have them available to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. All right, speaking of the members of the development team, it is now time for the applicant's part of the public hearing. So Peter, when you get them up, we will be ready for them.
Okay, I'm going to promote David Newhoff and Kevin Kalmbach from KEBS. Kevin's from KEBS, David's with the mall. And Jeff Kais is here. I don't know if Jeff wants to be promoted, but oh, he just got promoted. And mall folks, if there's anybody else, let me know. Yeah. And mall people, if there's anybody else you want me to promote, please just let me know.
All right, so it looks like it'll be David from the mall, who's be speaking on behalf of the applicant, perhaps. David, make sure you unmute yourself.
You've all been added, so yeah, be sure to unmute.
There we go.
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, it's good to be with you guys tonight. Thank you so much for your time. My name is David Newhoff, 212 Shady Ridge Lane in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I represent the mall in the development fashion. We certainly value our relationship with the township and feel we are definitely partners in the community. It was referenced earlier about the farmers market, and very happy to see that that happened this year, and so glad that that's part of the property now. There's an excellent addition there. With this request, we have an opportunity to add commerce to the mall PUD. Feel that it's certainly consistent with the commercial zoning. As you all know, Grand River is a very substantial artery. And we'd like to continue to add to the mall offerings for our guests. And so with this application, we appreciate your consideration. It's fairly straightforward. It's roughly an acre, a little over that. There will be 3 drive-through facilities with the development. And again, it's pretty straightforward. We appreciate your consideration.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the development or the applicant team looking to speak this evening?
Yes, this is Jeff Kais. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. KEBS Incorporated, 2116 Hazlet Road in Hazlet. I just want to point out that we did get comments back from Road and MDOT saying that they had no concerns. A few months ago, I had sat down, well, it's been more than a few months before COVID, and met with the drain office just to discuss some options on what they would like to see. So I'm comfortable that we're on the right track there. Part of that land swap was at 4 acres, and the 4 acres actually extends out to Okemos Road on the west side of the property. And that 4 acres is going to remain green no matter what forever. It's wetland area and some floodplain, but it does count towards our green space. Utilities around the area for connection, and I feel it's a nice project to move forward with. And we'll answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else from the applicant team wishing to speak this evening? All right, we'll go ahead and move forward into our public comments section of the meeting. As before, public comments are limited to 3 minutes and are limited to the topic at hand. You can raise your hand if you're in the Zoom meeting, or you can give us a call. Our phone number, once again, is 517-349-1232. And please make sure that you give us your name and address for the record. I see we have our first member of the pseudo public, and that would be our Neighborhood and Economic Development Director, Clark.
Good evening, commissioners. I hope you're having a great night. I just wanted to speak in support of this project. And when we think about, our future, we think about our current climate, our community is experiencing, we want to make sure that one of our biggest commercial core organizations has all the tools that they can in order to bring in as many tenants as possible and possibly additional visitors into the mall area. So it's a great location. It's not a big disruption to neighborhoods. It's another great use, and it allows us to show that we've got some creativity in future development of the mall area. So that's my support. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we do have a member of the public with their hand up.
Yeah. Okay, Ms. Jessie Adler, you're on the Planning Commission.
Jesse Adler, 1580 Hillside Drive. Might as well chat as long as I'm listening in tonight. And I just wanted to say thank you for considering this project in an already developed portion of the township. That's always been one of our biggest complaints, is the taking of new land that isn't already developed. And so it's nice to see the corridor being used for this type of development. So I don't know all of the details. I didn't read it that closely, but looking at the map, I do agree that it's a good location, and hopefully revitalization of that inner corridor in the mall property. So anyways, looks like I'm in support of it. I didn't see what kind of bank it was. I don't know if it's something I use or not, but looking forward to seeing more details on it later. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak this evening? Anyone calling in, Stephen?
No, sir, there are no telephone calls at this time.
All right, then we'll go ahead and close public comments and move on to Planning Commission discussion. Planning commissioners wishing to speak on this topic. Commissioner Bloomer, then Commissioner Primo.
One comment and one question. My comment is I'm surprised there isn't already a bank in that location. It appears to be ideal for the purpose. My question to the developers is, you don't have to tell me which bank is there, but do you already have a customer, or is that building going to be vacant until you develop a customer for
We do have a customer for that, yes, subject to the process that we're going through right now. Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Primo.
The thing that I like about this project is that the egress and ingress are all within the mall property. So we're not creating any kind of traffic issue out on Grand River. And I think that uses the property well without disrupting the flow of traffic on a major thoroughfare. So I appreciate that, especially when you have a drive-through situation, which we always take issue with when it's off a main artery. So I think the plan, as I look at it, is well laid out, well thought out. It's a great use of property. They already, if you drive around the circle, there's already another a financial establishment that's functioning in a similar way, and it's well managed and works well. And so I would be very supportive of this.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cordell.
Yes, thank you. I'm also supportive of a bank at this particular location. Although I am concerned about the waiver of. It's been my practice, my personal practice, and I think the Planning Commission's abided by this too, to not waive a bypass lane. If you get stuck, if you decide you need to leave, then there's no way to avoid the traffic, the cars queuing up. So I see this is a good opportunity to add a bank on the mall property, but I think they may have to scale back to 2 lanes for the ATM.
Commissioner Richards?
I support the project as proposed.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner McConnell.
Hi, thanks. A couple of real big picture things and then a couple of down in the weeds. First, big picture, the mall, I feel, has been an excellent partner with the township, and I support that kind of partnership wholeheartedly. On the other hand, putting another drive-through facility on Grand River Avenue doesn't concord with my understanding of our shared vision for where we want this corridor to go. And as a mixed-use core, adding another drive-through commercial facility doesn't move us forward towards that vision. So I hesitate in that sense. In terms of the drive-through lanes, I notice on page 85 of the PDF, it labels the 3 lanes, 1 as ATM and 2 as VAT, and I was curious what that VAT designation means. And the last item is that I see 2 pathways from the sidewalk on Grand River, one that goes into the bank, which is great, that folks getting off the bus there or wanting to use the bus can walk to the facility without going across the lawn. And the other is another bike ped path to the east of that connects to the parking lot. And I understand that, I guess, for bikes. I'm not sure where pedestrians who use this amenity are, what they're meant to do once they get to the parking lot. So I don't, maybe those are questions for the applicant in terms of what's the designation for those lanes, and what's the expectation for who would use the amenity that brings pedestrians into the bottom end of a parking lot.
Anyone from the applicant like to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it, but Jeff might have more comment than me. I believe the VAT stands for a video something terminal. So when you pull up to make your transaction, you're actually looking at a video screen. And I believe that's what that stands for. As far as the amenity, I believe it was just for a more of a additional connection to the ring road, which leads then to the mall area. Jeff, you might want to extrapolate on that.
When we went back through and we actually tried to do a CPUD amendment for, it was a Panera on the west side of the drive, but it was determined that that site's non-buildable really. There was a lot of discussion that they wanted to see the current planning commission and board wanted to see some type of connection, trying to get, you know, pedestrians and bicyclists to be able to get into the mall area. where we've set that up in the crosswalk is they can go across the ring road there, and we're going to have it striped, and I'm sure we're having it signed, and it gets them at least to the one parking drive aisle, and it can get them right up to Macy's. So that's the idea, is to be able to get more defined area, because if you do go out there right now, the bikes are following wherever they want to go, because there are a lot of bikes coming to the mall in the fitness area especially. But so that was the whole idea, is trying to get pedestrians, non-motorized, into the mall area at what we feel would be the safest spot, instead of where there's grades and where there's intersections. So that's that second sidewalk. You know, if you look at the last page, that's our amenity sheet. There's lots of other amenities on there. One of the biggest one is the CATA drop-off, main loop there. But yeah, as far as the VAT, it's basically a video teller, and they pull up and they see the screen, and it's still, you know, money goes through, you know, those little vacuum tubes. So they still can talk right to a teller. The other one labeled, that's strictly a straight ATM.
Well, thank you for those answers. That clarifies a lot. Maybe just a suggestion. I love obviously improving access to the mall for all modes of transportation. I wonder if a transportation commission or others might have ideas for something that might be a little bit more get a little bit more use than what's been proposed. In principle, it sounds great. I'm not sure that's the best use of that set of concrete, but thanks.
Commissioner Cordell?
Yes, thank you again. I'm on board with the concept of another bank coming to the mall property. Again, it seems like there's a little too much being planned for this particular parcel. And I thought it a bit ironic because there is a great deal of parking that's not being used at the mall. So it seemed like a self-created dilemma of, why am I asking for a waiver to put more than I need to when there's underutilized property around the mall? Can someone respond to that, please?
That's always a tough question when you have your anchor stores and what you have to go through as far as their parking to be able to share it. But we've set this site up strictly as a standalone site. So this could be split and still meet all setbacks, all coverage. The only waiver we're asking for, like I say, is the bypass. But if you look at, you know, bypass lanes, yeah, they work great. I feel they work great for fast food restaurants and everything else. But when you have 3 lanes of you know, drive up for a bank and you're in the ATM line, there's no way to get out to a bypass. So the bypass lane in this case, to me, we felt really wasn't needed, because you're pulling in right off the ring road. There's only 3 cars, you know, stacking behind, and you go straight around the building. So we feel this is not a situation that people get stuck in there. And we're just confident that, you know, the bypass lane is not needed in this case. You know, if you're sitting in the middle lane or if you're sitting in the lane by the building, the only lane the bypass lane would help is the outside lane. You can't cross the other 2. So that's why we feel that in a situation with 3 lanes like this, you know, this is kind of set up backwards compared to a lot of the banks where you're coming in off of the Grand River in front and you're driving around behind, and then you have the teller lanes back in the back. And in every case we've done those banks, we've had a bypass because you get caught behind the building and you need to be able to go around if you don't want to go through a lane. This case, like I say, the drive-through lanes are front and center as soon as you pull on the property. And I think you can make your choice and, you know, go straight around the building and not go into a lane, or you can go into a lane.
Better. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm generally supportive of this project as it currently stands. I had a very similar question to Commissioner Cordill, which is we seem to have all of this currently unused space in the parking area available. It seems logical that we could repurpose some of that. Now, I understand that that takes parking away from your anchor stores, and you absolutely want to retain and bring in new anchor stores when needed. And so you want to be able to have sufficient parking for that. But you know, we're talking about greenfield development here with this project. And while I am generally supportive of what I'm seeing here, I think it's well designed. I think it's everything we look for generally in a project like this. I also worry that this could be put across the ring road directly to the north of this, and it would be just as effective at, number one, you can still see it from the road. So you would, I think, still get, customers coming in. And number two, you wouldn't have to eat up the green space, and that could be used for other things down the road if need be. So just a thought. And then my second point is about amenities. I know we've talked a lot about amenities, and our MUPUD subcommittee will tell us more about amenities in a little while here. But if you're going to consider this a standalone project, which is what I heard from the applicant a moment ago, I question whether or not the pedestrian access to the building is enough in terms of a public amenity that would qualify for this particular project. And I wonder if there shouldn't be something more along the lines of a bench or two added, or some bicycle parking added on the on site, that sort of thing. If you're going to encourage people to come down, pedestrians and bicyclists, it would be nice for them to be able to have a spot to park their bikes when they're on the property. And so some additional consideration to some of those amenities, I think, would be in line here. But as I say, I'm generally supportive of what I'm seeing. I think the project is overall a pretty good idea. And I think that, to have another bank in here would not be out of line. So those are my thoughts. Whether or not it moves the needle in terms of the sense of the Planning Commission is up to the rest of the members, but that's sort of where I found myself landing on this particular project.
This David, I appreciate those comments, and we can certainly take a look at if there are additional amenities that we can provide here. Certainly the end user has particular plans that they have in place, assuming all this goes forward. So I would have to talk with them about that. As far as the mall and the unused space, it may look and appear like, yeah, let's just put it right there in front of Macy's, but understand how difficult those negotiations are with them right in front of their door. It's very difficult. Believe me, we've got plans that we would like to try to implement over time at the mall, and there will be plenty of negotiations probably over time with certain anchors there. If it was that easy, I think we would do it. It's just difficult. I know you guys aren't into that part of the business, but we try every day to sort of densify where we can. And again, Grand River allows for excellent visibility, and I think that's why this is sort of brought to where it is, and we think we've presented a pretty good plan to incorporate it the best we can. I appreciate the comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Cordell.
Oh, I appreciate your comments, Chair, about the site selection, I guess, given the amount of property of the mall, and that it would be good to see the amenities beefed up a bit.
I did see Peter
you.
wishing to speak for a moment.
Yeah, on the same topic that Holly just mentioned, the Planning Commission does have the ability to consider and recommend amenities, specific ones, along with your approval. So if that's something you choose to do, you should outline that now or at the beginning of, well, ideally now, if there's specific things that you'd like to see so that we can have them in a future resolution. But if those come up, certainly before the next meeting that you vote, you should work to enumerate those.
And I suppose, I guess to sort of codify what I was mentioning earlier, I guess I would be in favor of seeing some additional bicycle parking on site, and perhaps a public bench or two available on the property as well. I don't know if the other commissioners are with me on this, but those were a couple of items that I felt were going to be of value to this particular project. Commissioner McConnell.
Yeah, I'm going to take back what I said earlier about that second pathway. As I think more about the use of that site, especially during the winter, when it becomes evident how many employees of the businesses in the mall are attempting to reach that CATA bus stop and Grand River Avenue more generally. As the application notes, if you're walking from anywhere from Schuler to Macy's and trying to get to Grand River Avenue, you're crossing a very large parking lot and a road and then a lawn. And the hardest part of that, since in the wintertime, the parking lot and the road are plowed, right, is wading through the snow that accumulates on that grass. That may actually be quite a viable amenity. And to underline Chair Hendrickson's comment, it looks like there's the minimum requirement in our ordinance is for one bike loop, and a second bike loop is always nice. I would note that banks with drive-throughs universally discourage cyclists from using those drive-through lanes. So having some way for a cyclist to access bank services that doesn't contravene bank policy and doesn't cause the cyclist to have to go into the branch, those are some things that might be considered in creating amenities for the project.
Anyone else have any discussion on amenities?
Also, I think the application sells the mall short on bike parking. I think there's more than they even called out. So yeah, go find the rest of the loops and get more points for that, because there is a fair amount.
Thank you. Okay. So I don't see anyone else raising their hands or looking excited about speaking on this topic. So I guess I got a couple of folks to weigh in on the amenities discussion. If we're ready to move into our straw poll, I guess what I would ask is for everyone to give a sense for Peter. Not only we'll first give a response on whether you're supportive of the new amenity, of the additional amenities as proposed, and then let us know how you feel about the project as a whole. If that makes sense. Are we comfortable with doing it that way? Okay. So we'll start with
the amenities. Just
yeah, I would
where we land on those.
The proposed amenities that I was discussing were additional bicycle parking locations on site and a couple of public benches available.
And to be clear, this is David. The, I guess, ordinance requires one or more. Is that correct? Amenity?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a question of meeting the what was, you know, considered the minimum of the ordinance, or doing a little bit more. And so we're talking about whether or not we'd like to see a little bit more in this case. Okay, Commissioner Primo.
You're being a little vague, Scott. Are you wanting 2 more benches?
I'm looking for 2 benches, and I guess, I don't know what was required of the bicycle parking. Was, you said it was one loop?
One
maybe
loop for 10 car parking spaces, 14 car parking spaces, so at least 1 loop.
Yeah. So I guess from my point, just to put some concrete suggestions behind it, 2 additional bicycle parking spaces and 2 benches.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so then we're looking for 2 yeses or nos when we come to you here. We'll start with Commissioner McConnell.
Oh, always put me on the hot spot. How about a bus shelter? Boy, if there was a bus shelter, I'd be all in favor of this.
Is there? I'm not familiar enough with the CATA route to know if there's even a bus stop at Grand River at that point.
Yeah, that's off-site.
There is.
Yeah, their bus stop is at the mall, by one of the main doors on the west side of the building there.
Okay.
So there is a bus stop for the #1 route on Grand River in between Marsh Road and the mall entrance. But there is no shelter. #1 comes out of Meyer, comes up Marsh Road, turns left onto M43, and there is a stop across from the Meyer gas station.
Is a bus shelter within the purview of the applicant at this point to add? I'm not even certain about that. Maybe Peter or Mark could weigh in on that.
One of the things that they'd have to get and work with CATA to see if that's a doable thing. You know, the issue for CATA is the maintenance and the care for a shelter. And also it's in the MDOT's right away, so that would have to get approval too.
Okay. I think let's limit, yeah, Commissioner Richards.
Yeah, I don't believe that we can require off-site amenities. I mean, it's one thing to require an amenity on site, but believing that that's not on site, and also CATA really decides based on traffic and boardings and unboardings, I guess, if that's the right term, when you put those up there. So I don't believe, although it's not a bad idea, I don't believe that's something we should be looking at for an amenity.
Okay, so I didn't get from Commissioner McConnell, I didn't get a yay or nay on the proposed amenities that we had been talking about previous to the bus shelter or the project as a whole.
Those proposed amenities sound good to me, and I don't see justification for not supporting the project.
Okay. Commissioner Primo.
I support both.
Okay, Commissioner Cordell.
I support the bicycle rack and the 2 benches.
Okay, Commissioner Shrewsbury.
I'm not unsupportive of the 2 amenities and support the proposal. I guess it wouldn't be a deal breaker for me, but if that's the will of the rest of the commission, I certainly would go along with
Commissioner
it.
Richards.
Yes for the project, no on the additional amenities.
Okay. Commissioner Bloomer.
I support the project, and I do not feel there's a need for additional amenities.
Okay. Commissioner Trezise.
I also support the project, and while I'm not opposed to the amenities, I don't see them as important towards approval.
Okay, and I would be supportive of both. So Peter, hopefully that gets you some sense of how we're feeling about this. And we'll go ahead and take this up at our next meeting. We will go ahead and close the public hearing at 8:59 p.m. I should have gone one more minute and got a round number. All righty, very good then. We'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is.
Thank you all.
Oh, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We'll go on and move to the item number 7, unfinished business. We have none. Item number 8A, mixed use plan unit development ordinance review. So it looks like we may have an update from our esteemed colleagues from their subcommittee, perhaps. Does we have someone who's willing to step up and give us an update?
Use your charger. I'm
So,
down.
Cordo, I think you're intending to be muted. Okay. Peter, do you have an update for us?
Yeah, I'll speak for the group. I saw Dave's hand up. I mean, I would defer to a member of the subcommittee.
I was just going to simply say the review's in process. We're working on it. When we've got something to show you, we will.
Terrific.
I'll add a little bit. We've had one subcommittee meeting so far. If you remember, it's Dave, Jerry, and Holly, and me and Amber in the subcommittee. So we met once via Zoom. I think we met for a couple hours and got some direction from the subcommittee. I'm putting together a draft with strikeouts and bold letters and all that kind of thing, just because that's what I'm used to working in. And we're going to have another subcommittee meeting next Monday afternoon. So in between now and then, we'll be ready to present maybe not an exhaustive list of every change that should be in, but at least a draft for that first meeting in December.
Excellent. Well, looks like we got the right team for the job then. I'm glad you think so.
Was my speaker on? I'm sorry.
It was. All right. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 8B, which is the Grand River Avenue project. Peter, what can you tell us?
It looked like Allison may have had a question about the previous.
Oh boy, I'm sorry. Did I miss you? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Allison. Go ahead.
I just raised my hand at the end. I was just fascinated by the one of the communications that was in our communications for the packet this month, and wanted to know if the folks that were working on the amenities had looked at any of those suggestions as just for consideration. I'm not saying that I agree with all of them wholeheartedly, but the green stormwater and that sort of thing just gave me some interest and thought there might be some connections there.
Well, we're going to talk about that later. I haven't actually seen much of that plan that Scott's going to cover that under the liaison updates. We looked at the what's it called, climate sustainability plan as a menu for some amenities as suggested by not the chair of this group, but member McConnell. So we'll take a look at that as well. Yeah, it just recently came into my orbit, so we'll look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions on the mixed use plan unit development ordinance review before we move on? I don't see anyone raising their hands, so we'll go on to the Grand River Avenue project. Peter.
Yeah, this was so there was a letter that was, as you may or may not know, and I'm not the project leader on this project, but there's a move to do some improvements on Grand River Avenue, I believe next year, and Mark can chime in if he knows differently than I do. The Transportation Commission and the Corridor Improvement Authority have been talking about those changes. Included in your packet was a letter that was sent to that group along with a response. So I believe Chair Hendrickson wanted to fill in the gaps from there. Is that right, Scott?
Oh, no, I was looking. No.
I think we both don't know.
Yeah, no, I recall there being great interest in this when I was serving as liaison to the Corridor Improvement Authority. This was one of their mandates was to work on this. and work with MDOT when they're coming through to do their resurfacing project on Grand River. Commissioner Cordell actually at this point might be better as our current liaison to the Corridor Improvement Authority, or I'm not sure, is it Commissioner McConnell who's on the Transportation Commission? You two might be able to give a more up-to-date coalescing of the information as to where we stand today. If either of you are willing to talk about it.
I'm happy to, but I'll defer to Commissioner Cordell.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. I was having technical problems with my power on this iPad.
Yeah, we were discussing the letter at the end of the packet about the Grand River improvements.
Yes.
And we're wondering if you might have an update as to what's going on that's, above and beyond the letter that was provided to the Corridor Improvement Authority, since you're our liaison to that body.
Well, a letter over the summer, the Transportation Commission held a meeting in joint with the Corridor Improvement Authority. It wasn't, Corridor Improvement Authority didn't have a quorum, so essentially it was transportation. But anyway, a letter was sent out to MDOT with the chairs of those corridor improvement and transportation, highlighting things that they would like to see in the on Grand River with the proposed resurfacing and a somewhat redesign of Grand River. Are you asking for anything different than that?
Just if you had any more detail than the letter that we saw in our packet provided, that was all.
No, that really encapsulates what we're looking at.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure thing.
I might just add to that as I understand it, the first of those requests which is the addition of signalized pedestrian crosswalks, I believe came from a survey that the former economic development director did of businesses in the corridor. And their request was for safe pedestrian crossings in between the current signalized intersections. Some of the subsequent requests came up in that joint meeting. It sounds like that first one is the most likely to happen, but it will require some local contribution. Others, MDOT is less ready to, it's going to be a longer stretch. But the Township Public Works Department has been very diligently following up on those requests with MDOT and with the road department, and they're doing a great job.
Yeah, old habits. Director Clark.
Thanks. I just want to add something really quickly. So trying to tie all this together. This position is the staff for the CIA, and so I sat through receiving this letter through my first meeting with the CIA, but I also attended the Transportation Authority to hear Deputy Manager Perry's understanding of the letter and to try to break it down to the Transportation Authority, because the CIA and the MTC had the same goal. Obviously, the corridor wants to see Grand River be economically, robust and strong. And so that comes from a lot of layers of looking at a bunch of different things. The speed limit is something that is a big topic, right? Is trying to allow people to transverse one side of Grand River to the other without, it being like this. I don't know if you guys play that little app game Crossy Road, or basically like before you get ran over. How are you safely traversing both sides of the street? And they said in their letter, as you saw, that if they do a traffic study and it shows that most people are driving pretty fast, which we all assume and feel like people are driving pretty fast, that's what the speed limit will actually be. And the township has to sign a resolution to that. So that would be the next steps after that. So at that meeting, our local officer that was attending the Transportation Authority meeting in liaison, he said that they can kind of do a quick breakdown of the study of traffic information themselves. So they're going to do that. So I'm going to keep my eye on the status of that at the Transportation Authority to be able to tell the CIA as well as how that is working with them. So everybody's focused on Grand River. The project, the reason why it's so important too is the project has moved up in the timeline. So originally I think it was 2023 that it was supposed to start, and I believe it's 22 now, so it's up a year. So we wanted to take some quick action so that when they were making the designs, anything that we could incorporate was ahead of time. So I don't know if that helps to.
Yeah, thank you very much. My read of this was that MDOT was basically telling the township, sure, you can do all of those things if you pay for it and plan for it. Which, I mean, it's great. I mean, I guess having them be willing to, or at least be open to some of them is a step in the right direction, because they're, within their rights to sort of bulldoze us a little bit. So I appreciate the follow-up on that. Any other questions or comments on that topic before we leave them and go on? Commissioner Richards.
I believe it was during the discussion of if there were special use permits for the car dealerships east of Central Park Drive and Dobie Road and Grand River intersection. We talked about a left turn signal for cars coming off Central Park Drive going eastbound. And I think at the time we requested that, a letter be sent to the road department and MDOT. I guess if that hasn't happened, I think this is the time. And again, here we're looking at an existing an intersection with a light. We're talking about incorporating another movement that times of the day, there's quite a few cars that are backed up on Central Park Drive trying to go eastbound on Grand River and having really no time to do it. So if that hasn't been part of the discussion, I guess I'd like to make sure that it is mentioned.
Peter, do you recall if we ever actually sent a letter to that in that capacity to MDOT and the Ingham County Road Department?
For the Dobie intersection?
The intersection at it wasn't Dobie, right? It was Central Park and Grand River.
And Dobie, Central Park. Dobie is Central Park, Dobie, same road to me. Yes, we did send a letter, and then back in February, I think I sent an update. They are still looking at that. It's on their funding list, but no idea when the project's going to actually happen. I saw some striping has changed over there, but I don't think the actual signal's been added.
Commissioner Richards.
Yeah, I do notice that when there's road work in the township, sometimes you see new signals going up. So to me, if they're going to be working on that road in 2022 and resurfacing it and closing lanes, so that there's less than all the lanes that are out there, that would be the time to do it.
Yes, indeed. And that memory, Jerry, is why we made you our secretary. All right, we'll go ahead and move on then to agenda item 9A, Township Board updates. Principal Planner Menser, what do you have for us?
Hey, thank you very much. So Planning Commission last met at the end of September. So the board has met 3 times since that last meeting. I'm just going to run through kind of what they've had on their agenda. At their meeting in October, which was October 6th, they did take action on the Silverleaf PUD project over at Bennett and Hewlett. So they did approve that project. So it has been approved with the conditions that were offered, in the rezoning initially, those all stayed with it. So next step in that project would be submittal for site plan review. I haven't heard that they're doing that anytime soon, but I would imagine it's out there somewhere. The Township Board then met again October 20. They talked about, I guess nothing particularly, nothing, I'm only sticking, again, I'm not saying that these items aren't important, but there was nothing that the Planning Commission had on their agenda. And then the same thing for the November 5. They haven't had any planning commission related items since then.
All right. Thank you very much. Then we'll move, any questions for Peter? Planning Commission light. Yes, Commissioner Primo.
Peter, could you say a quick word about Walnut Hills again? I think that's a fascinating development.
I would have never have bet that this is the way this would have gone down, but here we go. The Walnut Hills, if you remember, there was the rezoning in 2016 that was proposed. Planning Commission saw it, recommend denial. Township Board ultimately recommended or ultimately denied it. We were subsequently sued, settled with a consent agreement between between the property owner and township for a specific development. I think the limit was 311 homes. And a lot of details related to that. Since that time, the property owner most recently sold the property to a local family to purchase the property as an estate and possibly do 3 or 4 lots for family members or close relatives. So that sale has been finalized, and township staff will meet with the new owners next week to talk about just logistics and how they what they need to proceed. The clubhouse was deemed to be not structurally worth saving, so that clubhouse will come down. My understanding is the family would then build a home on the property in the same general location. So a very unique outcome for an issue that the township has talked about for a long time. And like I said, if you would have given me a pick of possibilities, I would never have chosen that one. Not that it's not a desired outcome, it just wasn't expected.
Excuse me, how many residences are they building there?
Well, it'd be one family and possibly up to 3 or 4 homes. It's 190 acres.
Yeah, it's one block from where I'm living, so.
It's being turned into literally a family estate. It's kind of a win-win for the area that was not wanting a big development there.
Correct.
And it's strange and interesting.
Wow.
Commissioner Richards.
Yeah, this is a different topic, but real quick, Peter, the southwest corner of Cornell and Grand River, the former jewelry operation, what happened on that property? It came to they asked for rezoning. The planning commission recommended denial, if I remember right.
Yeah.
What did the board do on that?
So I went to the township board, and after talking, I talked to the what you don't see at these meetings is we have a lot of dialogue with the applicants outside of these meetings. So after the planning commission recommended denial, the applicant reconsidered his request and actually ended up offering a condition that if it was rezoned to C2, which was what was requested, that it would be developed using the MUPUD ordinance. And that was enough to provide the township board with some something that they could control a future project on the site.
Okay.
So so it did get rezoned, but conditionally.
And there's a big sign out there that says Zone C2, so he's very proud.
Yep. So he can use the site as is. Essentially, they can use the site as is, so you could sign a C2 tenant. However, any redevelopment of the site, I'm going to broadly define redevelopment by even a building addition, would have to go through MUPUD review. And the logistics of it really are that a building addition is not going to happen. It's either going to be used as is or redevelopment probably.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Peter? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to our liaison reports. I'll go ahead and go first. I've had 2 ZBA meetings since our last meeting. They were bundles of fun, as they so often are. In our October 14th meeting, we considered a case, provide some variances to allow for additional parking at the watershed at Hazlitt and Marsh, which the ZBA denied. We also considered a case on Hewlett Road to allow an existing garage to continue existing, which we approved. And then at the October 28th meeting, we saw the property that this body rezoned just south of, I think it's Bluegill Grill, just south of Lake Lansing. We had that one that we initiated the rezoning for the one property, and they wanted a bunch of variances to allow for driveways and garages and building width and 5 or 6 asks on that property. And we granted some, but not all of those variances. So exciting times. And I'm going to let others talk, and then I'm going to come back to the communication item 5C and talk with hopefully Commissioner McConnell about that a little bit further. So maybe I can have him primed to talk about that in a minute or two. So with that, any other liaison reports from other meetings that we've attended? No, it's been a quiet month for meetings, I guess. Okay. So Commissioner McConnell, can you tell us a little bit more maybe about what we saw in our packet this evening about the communication from Leroy Harvey on the green stormwater infrastructure audit? Were you a part of that as our liaison to the Environmental Commission?
Yeah, thanks. I have been part of that discussion. I was delighted to hear that the MUPUD group is referring back to the climate sustainability plan and looking for ideas around amenities. This effort comes from the same place. Objective E2 in the climate sustainability plan is reducing stormwater runoff. And this audit was an activity that staff initiated with local collaborating organizations. Our township staff is really good at reaching out to knowledgeable partners on things like tree planting and green stormwater. It used a tool that was developed by Wisconsin Sea Grant to help with the review of local ordinances to see how green stormwater infrastructure can be better incorporated. And the result of the process to date has been a number of recommendations for potential modifications of the township code to encourage the use of vegetative measures to slow and filter rainwater before it gets into the stormwater system. What Cliff Walls from Tri-County has prepared for us is a set of 2 phases of recommendations. The first phase is mainly definitional, figuring out what we mean by green stormwater infrastructure, what counts, and bringing that definition into the code. And then the second phase would then follow from that with more specifics for places where the code could actually be amended to implement that. So far, the audit has focused on kind of development by right and not dug down into the weeds of MUPUD or other instruments where it could also be applied. So I guess what the Environmental Commission is asking for at the moment is a sense from the Planning Commission of interest and support in further analysis down this track, and some sign of where energy is best spent. If it's best spent in the current MUPUD discussions, that's one thing. If it's more a matter of looking at other parts of the code, then that's useful information to guide the efforts of the Environmental Commission. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Commissioner McConnell on this? Well, I'll go ahead and make a suggestion, I guess. I know we've seen a couple of projects lately that we've heard significant outpouring of opposition, let's say, because of some of the drainage and wetland concerns that we're seeing in many areas around the township. I would be interested in trying to have the Environmental Commission weigh in on ways that we might better adapt our review process to incorporate, number one, more current information, and number two, more complete information as it relates to, when we review some of these proposals, how to deal with both the storm water runoff that we're seeing from some of these developments. And so if there's any assistance that they can provide in getting us more complete information through, recommendations to adapt township ordinance, that would be helpful, in my opinion. I know that one example in particular sticks out was the I think it was the senior project.
ANDEV?
Yeah, the ANDEV project. And if I recall correctly, we were looking at a couple of studies that were 2-3 years old and weren't taking into account some of the other developments in the area. And so perhaps tightening that up might have been helpful so that we could, see more current information.
Yeah, thanks for that. I feel like the main sort of policy conundrum here is that we tend to set policy saying, if you're going to develop something, don't make the situation any worse for your neighbors, whether it's stormwater or traffic or noise or whatever it might be. Then people look back at the results of past development and they see more flooding, and it's very difficult to know whether the flooding is a result of some of the other development or just rainfall patterns change. But the experts tell us that we're going to get bigger, stronger storms, so we should be adapting to that. But on a project by project basis, if our decision criterion is don't make it any worse, then we're not actually adapting. We're just making sure we don't add to a problem that we might believe is growing. So how to get from, so no net loss of wetlands, for instance, to a net gain of wetland, until you provide an incentive for a property owner or developer to do that, they will always tend to meet the lowest criterion, which is don't make it any worse.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the policy challenge in this instance.
Yeah. Commissioner Shrewsbury?
I was just going to say, a lot of the things that are being proposed in this particular communication are things that I've seen the county drain commissioner advocate for or work into projects, I think primarily funded through his office. But, when I was on the Lansing Planning Board, there were some proposals for some stormwater retention and sort of mitigation issues in the Frandor area. And there's some really cool work, the stuff on Michigan Avenue in downtown Lansing and Tollgate wetlands and things like that, that I think it looked like there were a number of creative ways. And if this could be something that would be listed on the list of amenities, I think it might have an impact or have the ability to do some of that in a way that really would push some of this more. So again, just glad to know that this is being talked, this is just one, but looking at environmental things that we could offer as amenities that could provide some public benefit.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner McConnell, is the Drain Commissioner's office in on these discussions?
Not directly, but everyone who is in on the discussions is in communication with the Drain Commissioner's office in one way or another, and the facilities that have been built that Commissioner Shrewsbury was referring to are very much on our radar as the kinds of things, and some have worked better than others. So we're trying to be deliberate about that.
Great. Any other questions for Commissioner McConnell? Any other liaison reports? Okay, seeing none, move on to item 10 on our agenda, which is project updates. New applications, none. Site plans received, none. Site plans approved, none. We've outlasted almost all of our public here, but we'll go ahead and give the remaining public an opportunity to speak at this time as we move into agenda item 11. Reminder, please limit your comments to 3 minutes and give us your name and address at the beginning. Oh, and you can reach us on the phone, by the way, at 517-349-1232. Looks like our one remaining member of the public in our Zoom meeting is already raising their hand, so I won't have to remind everyone else about that as well. But we'll go ahead and get her promoted and give her an opportunity to speak at this time.
Okay, we have Jesse Adler who wants to speak to the Planning Commission. Jesse, you're on.
Thanks, Peter. And yeah, you can laugh at me for hanging out with you for the rest of this meeting, but this was
No.
informational thing. So Jesse
not at
Adler,
all.
1580 Hillside Drive, follow protocol here. Just want to say thank you guys for your considerations earlier tonight on the rezoning. I think you shared our concerns as well. And so that was really nice to hear. You know, I just had a couple additional things that didn't quite get mentioned, but you know, Powell Road, this was in Peter's comments, and I wanted to mention as well, I think is or was designated as a scenic road. And that's something we didn't talk about, but I think that should be in consideration as long as, you know, we're up for debate of just the general master plan and the use plan and the future site plan and all of those things. So again, just taking all of that into consideration. You guys had some great points tonight that even I didn't think of. And especially to Commissioner McConnell's point about the entire, you know, Grand River corridor project in general and what we're looking for and everything. So whether that's the bank project, the mall, the car dealerships, the McDonald's, the pedestrian crosswalks, just wanting to thank you all for taking that into consideration. Can we please, at all costs, get that green arrow at Central Park and Grand River? That is where I live, and it's 100% a disaster every day. So whatever we can do to convince MDOT to get those signals in there would be appreciative of. I noticed in the very last item there was that MDOT proposal, and I'm not in favor of the extra street lights. We have enough light pollution in this township in general, so I think what we have is sufficient, but the pedestrian crosswalks would be a bonus. And the repaving, but I think we can all say the repaving in general in this township needs help, but that's a funding issue. So I was looking at my notes. I think that's pretty much everything. You know, these meetings are always informative, and thank you guys for serving. I've considered it myself, but don't necessarily always have the full time. So appreciate what you do, but it really just asks you that you take our concerns into consideration when it comes to just the future land use and what's best for our citizens, whether it's the infrastructure, the green space, the wetlands, the parks, et cetera, et cetera. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jesse. And if I came off as flippant before, we do appreciate all the members of the public who take an interest in coming to take part in our meetings. So thank you for sticking around. And if you are interested, we do have an opening on the Planning Commission as we speak. And you can always go and fill out an application you can find on the township website and submit that. And our supervisor will consider appointments to be, consider recommendations for appointments to the Planning Commission in front of the Township Board. I mean, that goes for anyone who's watching. If you're looking and interested in serving and have enjoyed watching our meetings via Zoom this past few months, please feel free to go ahead and submit those applications today. We are a bundle of fun. So with that said, we'll go ahead and close public remarks if there's no one on the phones. Stephen.
There are no calls. Thank you, Chair Anderson.
All right, then I believe it would be appropriate to entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Primo, seconded by Commissioner Shrewsbury. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
And we stand adjourned until 14 days from now, whatever that is, November 23rd. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Good to see everyone.